Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to part 4 of the DIT Manager training. This will be our final training for the year, so hopefully we will make some good use of your time and give you a couple of good tips as you kind of push on through these last couple of weeks. So without any further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So just one second. We seem to be not moving. There we go. Okay, so here's what we're going to be covering today. So first thing, take a breath. We'll talk a lot about this today. I actually met with a handful of team managers yesterday, and it was clear. I think we're all a little bit panicked and kind of at that time of year. So we'll hopefully give you a few coping skills there. Very quick review, just a couple of things that we've covered before, but just to touch on again that hopefully can help you as you're kind of pushing towards a final solution. And then we're going to spend the rest of the time really talking about not just the tournament, but then kind of preparing for the tournament. So we'll go through some, kind of what to expect at the tournament, sort of how they typically work, how things go with performances, et cetera, and then going to take a quick step back to sort of 1 month out. We'll call that today. Obviously, I know that there's some folks from different regions. Everybody has their tournaments on different weekends. Some of you may be as late as the end of the first week of March. Some I think are in about 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So this will be a little bit off, but we'll just call it today. And then we'll talk about what you can do kind of 1 week before as you're finishing up your preparations, and then what to do really, and I put 3 days before, but kind of right before you go to the tournament, some tips and some things that you can think about that hopefully will make just make it an easier experience for you guys, and really to help mitigate the stress as much as possible. And hopefully if any disasters strike, you will at that point then be prepared to deal with them. So we're going to get started here. So where's your team today? I could ask every single one of you and I'd probably get the same answer, and that's where we're all at. I will tell you that is where team managers are at the 1st of February. It doesn't matter if you're a brand new team manager. It doesn't matter if you've been around for 10 years. It doesn't matter if your team's experienced, if they're not, if they're working hard, if they're not. You're kind of at that point where whatever you're trying to accomplish, you're probably just sitting back going, I don't have the time. There's no way these kids are going to finish this stuff. What the heck am I going to do? So everybody says that. Everybody feels it. It's real. So it's not like it's your imagination. It's sort of the panic. We all sort of personalize this and we internalize it. We take it on ourselves. Even though it's the kids doing the work, we really do stress about it. And so I just hope that knowing that every other team manager is feeling exactly the same way might help a little bit. But there's a few things I think that you can do to really move the dial on the team from where it is today to where it's going to be come the day of the tournament. So the first thing is you just got to dig in and get going. If you haven't, I know some teams are very slow to sort of start putting things into reality, really building, doing things. You got to just get going. The thing is you are definitely the biggest cheerleader. That's your job, but you're also in charge. You're the team manager. Now, they make the decisions, they make the creative, they make the work, but somebody has to manage sort of the project, if you will. So there is a time and point where you have to understand that they need to get going, and you need to tell them that. You say, look, guys, you can sit around and talk about it or, draw it on a piece of paper all you want, but you got to get building. You got to get started. You got to do things. That's important. And so that is your job at this point. Sometimes that means you have to be a little more stern. You have to be a little more, kind of disciplinarian, demanding, whatever you want to call it. But, hey, Bobby, put the book down and let's get over here and get started. You're supposed to be doing this project for the team today and you're not doing it. So get to work. Obviously you're going to be far more gentle than that. You're not going to be barking at the children, but it feels like it sometimes. So don't feel like that's not within your purview as a team manager. Certainly you're not to be building, certainly you're not to be solving the problems, but you certainly are to be directing traffic a little bit and keeping them on task. Stand behind them a little bit and going, so are you working? What are you doing now? What's your next step? okay, so why don't you do your next step? Great. All right, good. Keep going there, and then move to your next one and keep them working. Because there's a lot of them out there that if you don't do that a little bit, they'll just get distracted and start doing something else. So the other thing is I put it on here, fail faster. Whenever you build something, typically, if it's got any kind of mechanical function to it, if it's got any function that it's supposed to do at all, chances are the very first version of it won't work exactly the way you want it to work. So while you want to be as exacting and careful with that first one, you want them just to get it built so they can see what's going to work and what's not going to work and what they need to improve upon it. If you spend 4 weeks building something the first time and then it doesn't work, then you've run out of time to build the second one. So or to improve on the first one, or whatever it is that you're going to do with it. So fail faster, get moving, kind of get it together. Don't just slap things together, but have the kids work a little bit quicker and have them kind of move through those things so that they can figure out what they need to do to change it or make it better if they need to at all. And hey, if you work through it quickly and it works perfect the first time, score. That's a big win for you guys. Keep moving. So. And this kind of gets back to the you're in charge. The time for brainstorming and debate is done. It's time to get moving and get to work. A little bit of the tough love, but definitely kind of instill that sense of, there's a sense of urgency that should be kind of upon them at this point. It's time to kind of get finished and get things ready. Tournaments right there, just around the corner. The end of the month may seem like a long way away to a 10-year-old, but it's not. So let's get moving. And this is kind of all on the same theme here, but just pick up the tools and build something. We're not sure exactly how it's going to work or what we're going to do, but let's start. We can't have anything if we don't have something. So let's just start building. And we'll, sometimes you're going to have to wing it and figure it out along the way, but that's certainly okay. So hang in there though. It's a tough time of the year to be a DIT manager, but you'll be glad you get through the next couple of weeks and get to the tournament. So definitely get that going. A couple of just quick revisit tips here. I'm not going to spend much time here. I want to get to the stuff about the tournament, but definitely about your storytelling. Make sure as they're sort of finishing up the details about their skit, they may be practicing it at this point, may not. Make sure that they're kind of thinking about that, about, is it easy to follow? Does it make sense to somebody who's never seen it? Does it have that sort of solid line of plot that goes through it? Is it interesting to listen to? Is it a good story? Is it something that they would like to hear told to them? And if the details are there, that's great. If they're not yet, they can start backfilling those now and, sort of figuring out sort of the, what's the backstory here? Where's the, put a little meat on the bone, if you will. And if you got time, certainly pull it apart and analyze it. Probably at this point, though, you're kind of moving along and just trying to get things finished up. So now's the time just to sort of practice it and make sure it's interesting. But it's not a bad idea to have them just sort of, as they're going through it and thinking about it, is, do all these plot points make sense? What if I've never seen this before? Am I going to be able to follow along and understand it? Because a lot of times you have teams that will have really good ideas and thoughts, but they just don't put it into a great story. And it becomes really hard to follow sometimes. And that's too bad, because you want the audience to get everything they can get out of it. So make sure that it's projecting the way they want it to, that it's telling the story that they want to tell and not confusing the audience. That's always a good thing. So this is the other one, resolving team conflict. Hopefully your team's kind of gotten better at this. You're starting to sort of figure out the dynamics. You sort of know how to manage the problems and the personality conflicts and things. But definitely keep this moving along. Hopefully this is something that you can move through more quickly now when there are problems, is that, look, we know how this goes. You have this, you have this. Let's talk about it for a minute. Let's figure out what the problem is here. All right, can we kind of move on? We're trying to get the stuff done here. We're trying to get built. We're trying to practice. We're trying to create a costume, whatever it is that they're doing. Can we sort of focus on the task at hand and, and get past this? So hopefully that's something that works. And sometimes if it's about building or things like that, and you keep getting that sort of dichotomic approach where you've got the team built into two, they're splitting into two. Maybe you've got some boys, some girls. Maybe you just have two groups of cliques that are in the team. Make sure that you're solving the problems and not leaving that residue of issue behind, because it'll just sort of continue to infect and make it worse as it goes. But definitely, hopefully, those are two things that you've been sort of acknowledging and moving through. So before I jump into sort of the tournament, kind of what to expect, all that, are there any questions about sort of where you're at right now? I'm going to talk a lot about what you can do over the next couple of weeks here in a little bit, but any questions immediately? Dick, maybe this is a good place to sort of put it out there before we jump into all the rest of it. Looks like nothing. Okay, we'll keep moving then. So tournament, what to expect? So at the tournament, you really do have two main jobs. The first one is to make sure that your kids, your team has a lot of fun, as much fun as they can possibly have. And the other one is to make sure that you have fun. It's gonna be stressful, okay? So the first rule is just be prepared for the drama. It's gonna be there somewhere, somehow. Somebody's gonna be late. Somebody's gonna say something mean to somebody. Somebody's gonna have a disagreement about something. Something's gonna break. Different things about that. So definitely, as you are getting ready, and we'll talk through some tips in a little while, but look for the areas of potential stress. Every team's going to have different things that will stress them out, but I think the things that are there are kind of universal across everyone. It's just going to hit your team at some point during the day. So the first one is definitely just the tension about the day. So the kids are going to be nervous. The kids are going to be geared up, hopefully. Hopefully they're excited to do their performance. They've put a lot of time in, a lot of work, and they want it to shine, and that's stressful. They're up in their performance. So definitely be aware that that's going to be there, and that may be if you've got a stressful dynamic amongst a couple of kids. You may want to kind of keep an eye on that. If someone's Dick, are you on mute? Picking up a little bit of background noise from something. So keep an eye on that. You're going to know your dynamics to your team. Your team may be real easygoing, real chill. Awesome. That's good. You don't need to worry about that. Parents and attendees, they can be real stressful too. Sometimes you've got, maybe there's a mom and dad that are divorced and don't get along real well. Maybe it's just you've got some parents that, aren't real engaged and maybe don't get people there on time. Make sure that you're communicating with them and trying to keep everybody informed, and I'll give you some stuff in a little bit that'll help that, but just make sure you're kind of bringing them into the loop and keeping an eye on things and trying to keep them all calm and things like that. Food's a big one. These kids eat. They eat a lot. I'm sure you see it at your practices. They eat. Make sure you've got things there. Make sure there's things for them to munch on and eat. There's nothing worse than a hungry 10-year-old. They get crabby and they get mean sometimes. So definitely do that. Schedules, not just your performance schedule, but are there outside schedule? Do some of the kids have other things that go on that are going to prevent them from being there early or going to make them leave, whatever it is? And the other one's weather. El Nino year, I think everybody should be planning for rain, and if it doesn't, that's a bonus. We'll talk a little bit more about how you can sort of help prepare yourselves for the weather, just to make sure, because obviously with a lot of things that you've built, it's got different kinds of paint on it, it's got cardboard, it's perhaps built with things that won't react well with water, so that can be very problematic in a real heavy rainstorm. So definitely make sure that you're thinking about that as well. The other thing to kind of to sort of talk about and what to expect is sportsmanship. We call it the spirit of DI, and this is really crucial for you to imbibe and to project it onto your team, onto your parents, onto everybody that's there representing your team. This is a really, really big one. It's a competition, and there's going to be people who get trophies and people who don't get to get trophies. So that sort of builds in that extra tension and competition, and there's nothing wrong with being competitive. There's nothing wrong with wanting to win, but make sure that your team is competing for the right reason. You're there to do your best. While you may not win because another team does better than you, you are not affected by that team. You are not affected by another team's performance. The appraisers are there to make sure that it's a level playing field, and they do their darndest to make sure that that happens. They work very, very hard to be as fair as possible to every single team that's out there. There's nothing against your team if something goes wrong, if maybe you feel you're slighted. So keep that in mind. The other thing is every single person that's working this tournament is a volunteer. These are not professional referees. These are not professional anything. These are volunteers, and we're all here to make this a positive experience. We're all here to make this fun. And so keep that in mind and keep it in good sportsmanship, and make sure that your kids are focusing on the right things. Is how did they do? Did they accomplish what they wanted to accomplish? You know, did they score all the points they wanted to? Maybe, maybe not. But did their performance go the way they planned it? That's what's important. You know, the journey that got you there is what's important. And don't lose sight of that. Don't badmouth other teams. Don't, you know, participate with malice. Obviously, don't try and, you know, no one's going to go out there and try and, submerge another team or something. But it's definitely make sure that you're keeping it in proper perspective. Supposed to be fun, supposed to be good sportsmanship, supposed to be cheering every other team on. You want every team to do their best, because that's the way it should be. Competition should be everybody doing their best, and then the one that does the best amongst them will win. And just keep that in mind, please. It's a big deal, and when people don't follow that, it's ugly, and it's not what this program's about, and it's not what we want at our tournaments. So definitely keep that in mind, and keep that to your kids, keep that to your parents, kind of the whole 9 yards, please, and repeat it over and over and over again. It's really important. So at the tournament, just some other things to kind of expect as you're getting ready, and we'll talk about, you know, like I said, month out, week out, 3 days out, but just at the tournament itself. Once you get there, you're going to have to register. You're going to have to check in, let them know you're there. You'll pick up your packet. It'll have your information in there. You know, every tournament's run a little bit different from region to region. So I know we've got people outside of Lottieland on the phone, but you know, if you've got questions about that, you can certainly reach out to your tournament director or your regional director and find out from them if you have specific questions on certain things about the tournament. Are there maps, that type of thing. There certainly will be things at the tournament, but there may be things available ahead of it as well. Pay attention to your performance schedule. You're going to have a central challenge performance and an instant challenge. You know, I know that every region scheduler tries to accommodate all the special requests. You may have siblings that are on 2 different teams. You may have somebody that can't make it at 8 o'clock in the morning and they need to be later in the day. You know, we try and be as accommodating as possible on those things, but you'll get your performance times. There'll be one for each. Typically, they're going to be spread out by at least a couple of hours, so that you've got some time to do the one, relax a little bit, unwind, recover, and get back and ready for the next one. You know, mornings and afternoons is typically the way they get split. One may be first, the other one may be first. So that'll definitely be the way that'll typically work. Helping your team. This is one I think that some parents get really confused about. Some team managers definitely get confused about. I will say that this year there is definitely an emphasis on keeping the interference down at the tournaments. I know what happens is you get parents who haven't been involved in the program as deeply as you have, and they may be trying to just help out, not realizing that they're interfering with something that the kids are doing, those kinds of things. So the one area, though, where you can help, and anybody can help, is moving the props. Anybody can help move the props to whatever the launch area is for your particular challenge. So that means carrying them from the car, up the stairs, into the room. All the parents can help do that. There is nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly allowed. But once it lands in the launch area, the kids tell you where to put it, set it down, and then they walk away. That's sort of you're just transport. You're just a moving company at that point. But getting ready for the performances, this is a completely different area. Getting ready for performances includes getting costumes on, doing hair. If there's face paint, there's makeup, whatever it is, the kids need to do it. So that includes getting dressed. So if they're putting on costumes and they're in the bathroom and you're just standing there, you don't help them. they have to do all that stuff themselves. They have to get ready for their performance on their own. When they get to the launch area and they're moving props around and getting things set up, they need to do it from there. Like I said, you're just the moving company. You deliver it, you walk away. So that's kind of a big thing to kind of keep in mind, that I think sometimes it gets a little confusing, and make sure you're explaining that to your parents about that interference, because if there's a parent sitting out helping one of the kids get ready, one of the officials walks by, there will be people kind of walking around watching for that stuff. They'll probably get warned and say, hey, that's not something you're supposed to do. If they do it again, the teams could definitely get deductions for that. And nobody wants a team to get deductions for a parent after they've been doing all this work for all these weeks and months. So definitely make sure that you're clear with that and communicating that to your parents so that they know. As far as attendees, who can come? These are open tournaments, so we strongly encourage as many people to come as are interested in being there. So grandparents, yep. Neighbors, yep. Any kind of family, any kind of friends, people who just are interested in seeing what the program's about, absolutely. I know there are a lot of teams out there that really enjoy doing this in front of lots of folks. The big crowd's kind of motivating and kind of exciting. But definitely, yeah, people who are interested to come and support your team, encourage them to come. It's a great time. I know a lot of people will go to watch one team and they'll wind up seeing 2 or 3 other challenges and just get really, kind of blown away by the program. So it's a great way to, kind of get your team to be supported and to, sort of spread the word about it. The one thing I'll say is make sure they're on time to the performances. Most of the performances are in closed rooms, and when the performance is getting ready to start, the door will close. There will be a door monitor, and the door will not open until the performance is done. That's to keep it fair. You cannot have those doors opening and closing while they're in the middle of their performances. So, if you show up at, for a 10-10 performance and you're there at 10-11 and the performances are running on time and you miss it by 30 seconds, you could be, it could be Johnny's grandma at the door. Sorry, Johnny's grandma, you can't come in because we have to keep this, fair and level for everybody. And, the kids don't need to be, interrupted in the middle of their performance. So definitely make sure you let people know if they're coming to visit that times are the times. And most of the time we keep these things pretty well on schedule, so I wouldn't count on it running 15 minutes late so that somebody can show up and still get there. So after they're done performing, additional activities at most of the tournaments, there's typically going to be some food for purchase. Not, it may not be everything you want, so keep that in mind. A lot of times there'll be like a photo booth, things, fun things like that. There's just a couple of different examples. Interactive, lots of games and things for the kids to do, keep them busy. Some of the tournaments will do some kind of, scavenger hunts or different kinds of interactive games where there'll be raffle prizes and that type of thing. The other thing that's also great to do is just go around and watch challenges. I know my kids love to do that when they're there. They like to go check out the different challenges, maybe see, if they're doing, you got a scientific team, maybe they want to go see a technical team, or they want to go see fine arts or improv or see what that one's about. Maybe it was the second choice of the team and they really liked it and wanted to do it, and just didn't turn out choosing that one, but they still want to go see what the challenge was all about and kind of how the team solve it. So it's a lot of fun. Sometimes they'll want to go see the kids that are either older or younger than them in the same challenge. That's fun too. Everybody sort of approaches it differently. So certainly something that I would strongly encourage you to, kind of let everybody know as you're communicating about the tournament that it's, it really is an all-day thing. You show up in the morning, you perform, you see other things. We'll talk about the awards ceremony here in just a second, but it really does run all day, and plan on being there. And enjoying all the things that are there. That's kind of part of this, is getting into the DI spirit and kind of letting loose a little bit. So award ceremonies at the end of the day, approximately 45 minutes long. Like I said, every region does it a little bit differently. I know in our region we try and get everyone get them out. Give out the awards that need to get given out and let everybody go home. It's it is at the end of a long day. It's stressful for the kids, stressful for the coaches, stressful for the parents. And everyone's pretty tired at the end of the day. So, but the key to that is It's a long day for you. It's a long day for the person sitting next to you. It's a long day for the person behind you, the one in front of you, everybody in the room. And the team that gets their award first deserves just as much applause as the team that gets their award last. And it always saddens and disappoints me that you see teams get their awards, maybe they're the second challenge awarded, and they get their awards and then they just walk out. And so I strongly encourage you, and I plead with you, plan on staying till the end of the ceremony, and tell your parents we're staying until the end of the ceremony. Don't give them a choice. That's just the way this goes. This is part of DI. We support everybody, and that last team that gets their first place should be just as well received as the team that went up for the first one. So please keep that in mind. Communicate it out to your parents. Set that expectation that the award ceremony, if it starts at 5, you're going to be here and you'll be out of here by 6. I promise. And it'll be done before 6, and you'll be out of there. But don't plan on getting your award at 5:20 and then walking out and bailing on the other half of the teams that still get to go up on stage. So please make that part of your plans for the day. Another question, place where we get a lot of questions around the tournament is the scoring. Kind of how does it work? You all have the rubric of how your scores are collected, and from challenge to challenge it's different, but there's definitely some different things about scoring. So kind of the general piece of your scoring to kind of let you know, raw versus adjusted scores. So within each piece of your challenge, there's going to be categories for your scores, and every one of them's different. But let's just use an example of something you have 30 points worth of score for it. You may get a raw score of 18, and you say, wow, 18's not great. It's 18 out of 30. There's a lot of points there. But keep in mind that the raw scores all get compared against all the other teams who score that way as well, and they get adjusted to the way that works is from adjusted score, is that the team that scores the highest raw score is awarded the highest point total in whatever that category is. So for instance, in that one, if 18 is your score out of 30, but you happen to be the highest score in that, in your challenge, you would actually be adjusted to 30, and then everybody would get a percentage of your score. So if somebody got, you got 18, they got 9, that's half. Their adjusted score would be half of your 30, which would be 15. So I don't want to go into all the math. I know it gets a little confusing, but just know that you're going to get raw scores after your challenge. And getting scores is one of the things that you'll get to do. So essentially after your challenge is done, they get processed by the appraisers. They go to the score room. They get, validated, put into the system, and then they come back, and then the challenge master will sit down with, typically most of them, and everyone's a little different here, but usually it's the team manager and one team member will sit down with the challenge master, and they will go over your scores with you. And you can, ask them a couple questions, go over it there, talk about it. If you do have any kinds of questions about, you don't think something was right, you want to do some types of protesting, we'll talk about that in a minute. But typically you have 30 minutes after you get your scores to kind of come back and say, we think this is wrong, or we think a mistake was made, and we want to, talk about this a little bit. But generally that's not something that happens. I mean, most of the time the scores are fair and adequate and right, but it does happen from time to time. So, but you'll get those, usually figure about an hour after your performance, after your central challenge is done. On the instant challenge, you will not get a breakout of your scores. Essentially, you'll just find out at the, once all the scores are released at the end of the day after the tournament, you'll just find out what your instant challenge score was. You won't get any breakdown about how it kind of comes from or anything like that. So a couple of things additionally about your scoring. There's objective scoring and subjective scoring. So objective scoring are, typically you're going to have something where there's a particular task that needs to happen. Some of these are sort of more embedded in these than others. For instance, in the technical challenge, there's a lot of objective scoring where machines have to do certain things. I know in the fine arts challenge with the Techniclue, different types of things. But these are things that, they either happened or they didn't. And, if you did it, you get the points. If you didn't, you don't get the points. These are not scores that can be challenged. Those are the decisions of the appraisers at the time. And so those are kind of collected and they are what they are, and typically those are generally dead on. So the other piece is the subjective scoring, where these are going to be sort of value assignments, the creativity, the innovation, things that are a little bit more, ethereal. They're not quite as defined. Certainly the appraisers are trained on how to rate these things, and they try and keep it on a very even keel so that everybody is relative to each other in a fair way. But these are based on opinions on how well things were done. So, these I'm sorry, I kind of switched this up. I said you could not challenge the objective scoring. That is the actual place you can challenge. I apologize. And then as for the subjective scoring, those cannot be challenged. Those are opinions. The appraisers will sort of, like I said, they do take the averages of the scores, which hopefully sort of evens out the highs and the low scores. Every appraiser, judges a little differently. Some may be a little tougher than others. Some may be easier. So, taking the average always, kind of blends those things out. But those scores are what they are. So the places where you could potentially have a question is an objective score where maybe it was determined, event X didn't happen. Well, it did happen because this is what happened, and those types of things. So, but like I said, the challenging things like that, not typically something that happens, but it certainly can once in a while. So, any questions on just tournament day, sort of logistics, how it works, things you can do, things you can't do? Take a quick break here and see if anybody's got any questions. It's a quiet group tonight. I get it. We're tired. All right, so let's talk a little bit then about what you can do over the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, however many weeks you have left before your tournament. So today, it is February. Reality is set in. The tournament is in full view on the calendar now. But like I said earlier, everybody's going through this. So, try and put the stress aside, breathe a little bit, and let's just figure out what we can do to kind of get things going. Help them with their, kind of analyze their progress and figure out what they are going to and not going to be able to get done in the next month. There are certainly some things that you can do to kind of help this a little bit. Sort of analyzing what's most important to them and what's not as important to them at this point. Kind of creating that list of the projects that are left. Probably a pretty long list at this point still. I know the one for my team is oppressively long, and it's depressing, and it's overwhelming, and it, makes you short of breath sometimes. But they've prioritized it, and they're gonna start at the top of the list, and they're just gonna keep working until they get as far as they can get. And whatever they don't get to, they don't get to. But I think you have to help them analyze that at this point. So figure out what you really got to have for the tournament and what you don't have to have. Keep it on the list, but just understand that those things may or may not get done. And that's okay too. So, but, definitely go through that exercise with them as you're at the meetings and, you're talking to them. And maybe, it's stuff that they're doing as they're working on things is, hey, what else do you want to get done? What else do you think you need to get done? Are there more costumes that you need to make? Are there any more props that you want to make? Is the machine working the way you want it to? Et cetera, et cetera. Whatever it is, do we need to be more prepared in any which way? And then let's get that all on a list and then figure out what we want to do. And just keep on doing it. So definitely stay positive. The kids are fairly resilient, but if all they get from you is, sort of, oh my gosh, we're never going to get this done, they might start believing that, and that's not what you want. So, hey, just going to keep going, and, we're going to get to the tournament. That's all I can promise you at this point. And we're going to have fun. And, we're going to work hard between now and then whatever we don't get done, we don't get done. So make sure you kind of keep that upbeat attitude. Like I said, you're the biggest cheerleader on the team. That's part of your work here. So make sure that you keep going with that. Even if you don't believe it inside your own head, just keep on pushing along, because you know what? You're going to get where you're going to get. So one of the other things, and this, I think most of the regions now, you wouldn't have the option to not have this done yet, but make sure that your team registration is all up to date, everything's in there. Your appraisers, your volunteers are all set. Most of that appraiser training is going to start happening here if it hasn't already happened in your region. Just make sure that you kind of got that, not just the online registration, but make sure that the people that are supporting your team in those roles are, 100% committed, they're ready to go, they're prepared, they're going to be supportive, they're going to be good, all of that stuff. So definitely that's a good thing to do. A couple of other things to start thinking about as you are practicing. Obviously, you're going to be doing some skip practice now, integrating your props, whatever you've built, those types of things. Start to think about your practices in relation to how they're going to be doing it at the tournament. Every one of these challenges within the specs of the challenge, it'll talk about the performance area. If you can get to that performance area, if you have a size of that, start using it. It's always a little tough for the technical challenge because the performance area is so large, but if you've got it and you can practice in it, start practicing in it. Start letting the kids understand what that's going to feel like, what it's going to do. So they're not only practicing their skit, but they're practicing starting their skit. They're practicing getting their stuff out there. A lot of times they get to the tournament and kids maybe haven't practiced moving their stuff around and they don't realize that, oh my gosh, we're setting this thing up with things on the totally wrong side of the performance area. We should have flopped it because now I got to run over there and grab that, and different kinds of things. So that's definitely really helpful as you're going to be practicing anyway. Practice it like it's going to be at the tournament. It'll make it so much easier for the kids. Have them go, practice going from the launch zone. Don't set everything up and go. Start in the launch zone and have them practice moving stuff out, moving stuff off. The timing, the spacing, team ownership. So who's in charge of what as they're moving around with these things? If most of these skits will have different scenes. Okay, so as we move from scene 1 to scene 2, who's doing what? Who's moving things around? Is there a prop that has to come onto the scene? Who's moving that scene? You guys have to figure this stuff out. So they have to kind of figure out how they are moving and how they're moving the things around. It definitely becomes something that you choreograph. And the teams that are the most fun to watch, I think, are the ones that kind of practice that choreography a little bit. It just becomes more seamless. There's less bumpiness in between the scenes, a little smoother. The audience will not lose interest if the scenes are smooth between transitions and things like that. So definitely pay attention to that. And then, as you're moving through it, you've got that list. You're getting it. You got to get it all done here. One good way to do this is you sort of ordered things, and then the task list. Start splitting stuff up. Who's taking this one? Okay, it's Brian and Joe. Okay, so you guys are in charge of the next task here. This one's yours. So let's get started on it. If they need to take stuff away and do stuff on their own, that's okay. You got to be careful with parents at home who don't understand interference. But if that's what, they've got a specific task and they want to go get it done and they want to go get it done tomorrow night away from practice, all the better. Because then that's something that can get checked off the list and they can move one more down the list. So, once you've got it there, break it down to these digestible bites and just keep chewing at it and keep going along. That's the best way to get things done, to make sure that you are just maximizing the time that's left and getting things done as much as you possibly can. Definitely the way to kind of help that along. So a couple of weeks go by, lots of hard work going on, lots of things getting built, lots of practice going on. Now you got a week left. So it's the Saturday before the tournament. You may have practice on Saturday, maybe have practice on Sunday, whatever you got. Maybe you're having another practice the week, maybe even 2 more practices that last week. So you got a few things. You got a very finite amount of time left in front of you there, down to the number of hours. Get the final touches on the solution. What else is possibly important here? Oh, we forgot to, decorate this thing and we really wanted to paint it. Okay, how long is it going to take? Is it something we can do? Okay, fine, let's touch it up, get it done. You guys know what you're doing. So definitely start dress rehearsal at that point. You want to run a couple of times through full costumes, full props. One thing that's actually a great idea to do the week before, if you can manage it, is invite the parents, the grandparents, brothers, sisters, neighbors, anybody who wants to come over, and have them do the performance in front of some people. Because even though it's folks that they know, it's a different vibe when you've got people watching you. I think it helps when they get to tournament if they've done it a couple of times in front of other people versus just you and them in the garage. So, kind of think about that. It may be a little tough to do, but if you can even do it in a different location. Sometimes you may do things at school. Maybe somebody else has got a garage. Maybe there's another space you could use. Just someplace different. If the logistics of that don't work, not a big deal, but it can be kind of fun for them to go someplace else and do it for other people, wherever that may be. So just something to think about if you've got the bandwidth to digest one more thing on your plate here, certainly there. So the other things that you want to start doing at that point is communicating again with your parents about the tournament. You want to set the expectations for them. We talked a little bit about that earlier is, what is the tournament day all about? It's not about mom and dad and the fact that it's cold out or it's raining. I'm sorry for your loss there, but me and the team have been working really hard, and we really appreciate it if you'd be here to support us. Sometimes those parents, not every parent will be supportive, and so I think you need to be pretty clear with your expectations on what they're going to want. Or you could wind up with a parent showing up, if the performance is at 10, they show up at 9:30 with their daughter or their son, they're there, and instant challenges at 12:30, at 12:50, they're like, all right, we're out of here. It's like, well, no, you're missing the point here. So be clear with that. Whatever time you need your kids there in the morning, and be there early, well ahead of your performance time. Make sure that that's when they're there, and just let them know we're going to be here till the reward ceremony. So be ready for that. That's important. It's all about the schedule. You are in charge of that. That is not an option. It is not something that somebody else, unless you kind of are, you have an assistant that's going to run it. You're in charge of that at this point. You tell those kids where they need to be, when they need to be there, and they kind of belong to you that day. They're not mom and dad's unless you want them to be mom and dad's. Because it's, like we said, it's a stressful day. You're trying to manage that stress. You're trying to keep it down. I think at this point, you've probably got a really good sense of how to keep the dynamics of the team going in a good direction. So, take advantage of that and be the one in charge. It's definitely key. Definitely key. I put it here again just because it's that important. Continuously communicate that sportsmanship, that spirit of DI. If you've got that parent or even a kid, I've had one of those on my team where it's all about the win. It's all about what place did I come in. It's all about what that other team did that we didn't get a score for. That team was cheating, this, that, and the other thing. Just cut that off and just let them know that's not what this is about. Hey, look what we did. We did a great job. Hey, our scores were really good for our stuff. We were happy with that. If you didn't get a score that was really where you wanted it to be, well, then you must not have done it as well as you thought you did. And that's what happens. So make sure that you're keeping this, completely above board, and not letting it go down into that. Nobody's got time for that. Nobody wants to hear it. No place in it in this program at all. And if you have that, if you got a parent that's like that and they're being, kind of over the top, maybe they should just go ahead and go back out to the car and take a nap. So whatever it takes. The other thing that you're going to really want to start focusing right now is your paperwork. Every one of the challenges has its own paperwork that's included in the challenge. It's usually the last 3 pages that are in there. There's going to be a couple of things that the kids are going to need to complete here. It's really what it is this description of their solution. Various different points. Everyone will focus on a few different things. The kids need to go ahead and complete this stuff. They can certainly type it in. I know the forms are awfully small, so I know sometimes, I know my kids will just take it and put it into a Word document so they can just type it in. They're a little bit older. If you have elementary school kids, you can scribe it for them. They can basically dictate it to you. Once they get into middle school, the expectation is that they're going to do it. Whether they handwrite it or they type it, it's completely up to them. Just make sure they get the information in there. Make sure that they do spend some time kind of thinking about that stuff, because it's really important. If you think about the appraiser's experience, they have teams kind of going through every 20 minutes, and your kids probably have a fairly layered solution. There's a lot of cool things about it. They've spent a lot of time on a lot of these things. Make sure they're getting as much of that description into that paperwork as possible. Otherwise, the appraisers are going to have no way of knowing, what the heck is there. They may, maybe there was some really neat part of the engineering that, is sort of inside the machine, or it's underneath, and maybe the judges won't see it. Make sure they're talking about that stuff, because as the appraisers read that stuff, then they're going to be looking for it. And then when they're looking for it, they're going to see it. And then when they see it, they may realize, wow, that was really neat. But if it's not in the paperwork, they may not recognize what's going on, because they're only seeing this thing once, an 8-minute presentation, and then, 5, 6, 7 minutes afterwards for conversation and questions. It's not a ton of time, so you want to make sure that the kids are highlighting, what's important for those appraisers to see. Goes for the side trips as well. Make sure they're, they're really kind of putting in there what's important, what they're proud of, what all that stuff is, because that goes a long way. So to that, the last page is kind of it's not part of scoring the teams. It's really something I think that gets passed back up to DI, and they sort of use it to evaluate sort of how the kids are approaching things and what they're doing. It's really more them describing how they've kind of thought about things, what they've learned. It's really more of, almost think of it like a survey. Have the kids spend a little time thinking about it, and put down some answers there, because I think it's useful information and it does get used. So definitely spend some time with that as well. So a couple of days before the tournament, this is sort of one of those times, and little things that you do a few days before the tournament can have immense impact the day of. And I mean, kind of right there, you see it in capital letters. What will you do if? This is something that you should take some dedicated time that last couple of days, and have them think about this. And you could fill in, dozens of events that could come in here. What will you do if it's raining? What will you do if, you break something? What will you do if this fails? What will you do if somebody gets sick? What will you do, and you don't want to sit there and like gloom and like, oh my gosh, all these things are going to go wrong, but preparing them mentally for, hey, something could go wrong, and a lot of times things do go wrong. Transporting props, things get broken. They're moving them out of a car, and something that's made out of cardboard and glue gets caught on the roof as it's coming out, and it snaps off. What are you going to do? Lots of different things that could go wrong. So just make sure that you're kind of helping them think about these things, because if you're thinking about those things the Wednesday before the tournament, you can still do something about preparation. If you don't think about it until the day of and it happens, it's panic sets in a little bit. Even if it's something that can get fixed in 10 minutes, you still get that panic going, and you just don't want that. You want to let these kids enjoy the day as much as possible. So if you can minimize the drama, minimize the stress by being better prepared, that's a big thing that you can bring to the team that day. And knowing that you're prepared, I think, helps you too. So a couple of things that you will want to think about is definitely some type of tool and repair kit. And this is something that you should, go through with the kids. Okay, what do we want to bring for tools? What do we want to bring for repair? What do we need? Every team will definitely always say, oh, we need a screwdriver, we need duct tape. Of course, you're going to need lots of different things. But depending on what you've built, depending on what you've created, you may have some unique things in there that you might want to have to, try and fix what's there. Put it in a box, bring it. Hopefully you never open it. But you know what? If you got it and you need it, man, is it good to have. Because then you say, hey guys, no problem. No need to panic. You brought all the stuff. Let's just fix it. And they'll fix it. They always do. They always manage. And sometimes when they're fixing things that break on the fly like that, it turns into some pretty neat stuff. And I think that it can really have an impact on the appraisers when they come in and see something, and and then they're in the check, and, oh yeah, we broke this thing, but we fixed it, blah blah blah. That's good stuff. But definitely help them kind of think about that, is what goes into the kit, and have them sort of go through it and pack it. Let's put it together. Whatever it is. The other thing, certainly, if you're at the tournament and you've forgotten something, I guarantee you somebody else has brought it, so you can certainly find it there. But once again, that's 5-10 minutes of running around begging other teams for stuff that you really don't have to do if you just put a little bit of prep into that. So don't leave that aside. Definitely make sure you get your repair kit there. And I think there might be one online somewhere. I've seen it, but I'm not sure where. But certainly, reach out to your RD if you're looking for suggestions. But the kids should be able to sort of build these things and figure out what goes into those and what they need. So definitely kind of go into that. Performance checklist. Have them kind of go through what do they need for their performance? Are there, what is the list of props? What is the list of costumes? Is there anything that they're going to need outside of what's already built or created? Does somebody need to make sure that they, get some balloons that day, or, whatever in the heck it is that's in your performance? Everybody's is different. But make sure that you've gone over that, and so that they've got it all in their head. These are the things that we need. These are the things that we need to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that'll help them sort of go through that last exercise to make sure they've got everything lined up, ready to go. And that way, when they're there getting ready for their performance, you've got a list. Okay, Sally, you have the 3 hats and the paper mache frog. Okay, good. You've got this. We got that. Everyone got this. Do we have this? Do we have this? Do we have it? Good. We're set. All right, let's do it. And you don't leave something behind on your pile of stuff as you're getting ready to go into your performance. The tournament checklist. So this is really more kind of for the paperwork. Make sure that there's the tournament checklist is in your in the challenge. It talks about what you need as far as how many copies of everything. You do need multiple copies of your team's paperwork. You need multiple copies of the Declaration of Independence. You need your expense report. Make sure you've kind of got something for you to make sure that you're organized on that stuff. The worst thing is to be scrambling 20 minutes before trying to get some of this paperwork filled out, because then you're not focused on the kids. You're stressed as all get out, and something else can easily happen at that point. Not that it's going to, but the lower your stress level, just the easier it is, the better things will go, the less likelihood that something gets really squirrely and really sideways, because it's a bummer when that happens right before performance, because months of work gets sort of sabotaged a little bit by some unfortunate incidents that a team wasn't prepared to deal with. Go one more time just over the challenge scoring and the requirements. Have them take a look at it. You take a look at it. Just make sure you didn't miss something. It happens. Sometimes you get real focused on your solutions and you forget to do some little thing that's worth a few points, and no point in forgetting anything. So just take one more look at it. One more look through the rules of the road. Things happen that you forget are in there that you can't do or you shouldn't do. I have a very experienced team. I've been doing this a long time. I had a team at state tournament one year that had broken very clear rule of the road, and it slipped through at regional, but we just didn't bother reviewing it, and it came out at state, and it was tragic. At the check-in, where they had to they got, I think, 4 minutes to try and remove something that was non-compliant in the solution, and it was horrible. I was just devastated, because it was something, I felt like I was responsible for making sure the team did what they needed to do, and the kids were in tears. Don't put your team through that. Make sure that you're just taking a peek through stuff. Just one last look, nothing wrong with it. Got a couple of days if something needs to get scrambled and fixed. Doing the rules of the road, and then one more time through the paperwork. Just make sure you got it all. If you're a really organized person, you've got it in a binder, super. If you're maybe less organized, make a copy of them and give it to somebody else. If there's just any chance that you might forget stuff, make a copy, give it to one of the other parents. There's a real responsible dad or mom over there. Hey, put this in, here's an envelope, just hang on to this and walk around with it all day until our performance is done, just in case. Nothing wrong with that. It doesn't hurt. But if you only have one copy and you lose it or you forget it, it hurt a lot. So just make sure that you're kind of taking care of that. That should help you smooth things over. Kind of that preparation, I think, helps you feel a little bit more in control, a little bit less stressed. It's going to be it's a busy, fun, crazy day, but definitely from that standpoint, make sure that you're as ready as you can be. So what questions are out there? Anything? It's been a very quiet crew tonight, so I know I'm not that thorough and I know I'm not that good at this, so what do you need to know still? Anything, Dick? All right. Well, with that, I will reiterate one more time. This is supposed to be fun, and I hope as everything that you guys are having a wonderful time. I know in the stress and the craziness, most teams seem to be enjoying themselves. Just keep that at the front of your mind. You are the biggest cheerleader that team has. They need your positive attitude. They need your guidance. They need your organizational skills right now, and they need you to, taskmaster them a little bit to the finish line here. And whatever gets to tournament, make darn sure that you're extremely proud of what got there and how it got there and what they did. That's the entire point of this, is that they are coming through this and they're learning every step of the way. There's adversity, there's things that fail, there's things that need to be rebuilt, there's great designs that don't work that they have to scrap and retool and figure things out. There's conflicts on these teams that they have to get through. All of this stuff that gives you heartburn and keeps you up is stuff that they're learning that's just invaluable to the next step in their life, whatever that is, whether they're a third grader or they're a senior in high school. It doesn't matter. It's stuff that they will carry with them, and these are skills that they will use. So keep that in mind as well. You are doing good work. It is highly appreciated, not only by those kids, but by the rest of us, because we all got to live on this planet, and we need better humans, and that's what you're building here. So keep it up. Stay inspired. And best of luck at the tournament. I hope whatever you define as success at that tournament, your team finds it, and that you have a ton of fun.
Okay, Neil.
With that, I will say good night.
Neil, we have questions came up just as you were.
Just winding out. What's the questions? I love it. Let's have them.
Okay, the first one I'm going to unmute Manjula. She had the hand is up. Manjula?
Hi there. Yeah. So I had also typed in my two questions. So my first question was about when the teams will get to know about their scores. So would they get to know soon after they have performed their central challenge, or is it later? And likewise for the instant challenge.
So instant challenge, you will not get your score during the day. Most of the tournaments will post, typically sometime after the tournament. Some will post immediately after the tournament, that evening. Some won't post until maybe Sunday or Monday. At that point, they'll basically post everybody's raw and adjusted scores. That'll be the point where you see what your instant challenge score was, but you will not get it before that. And all you will get is the total. So instant challenge is always out of 100. So you'll basically just be able to see we got, 68 or 82 or 94 or 31, whatever it is. But you won't get the breakdown. Within the instant challenge, there's always, components that drive the total score. You will not get that breakdown. You will just get the total score.
How about the team challenge? When will they know the score for that?
Team challenge it's usually fairly shortly after it. It depends on how quickly the score rooms are churning the scores back out to the challenge masters. But figure definitely within an hour after your challenge, the scores should be posted, and then you can, every tournament, every challenge master runs it a little differently, but normally there'll be kind of a, somewhere in the room where the challenge is going on, there's typically like a list of the teams in order of performances of the day. And, they'll just basically, there'll be they'll highlight them when your scores are ready, or you'll get a check mark when your scores are ready. And then you basically just kind of go check back in and, hey, we're the Flaming Bunnies or whatever the heck the team name is, and we're here for our scores. And then the challenge master will, typically they will take you off into a side piece of the room or outside or whatever. And like I said, then they can sit down with you, one team member, review the scores, and then you get those and you take them with you. So you will have your raw scores at that point. You won't see the adjusted scores until everything's released after the tournament. So that you could, because teams always like to see how they did compared to all the other teams, but you'll just have your raw scores at that point.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question. This is regarding the expense report. So my team is planning to use materials at home, for example, like 5-year-old stuff sitting in the garage, or like old T-shirts. So I believe I saw in Rules of the Road that you can account for like rental charge of older items. I just wanted to confirm that. Like, how do you account for costs for things which are in our homes, basically?
So these are things that are going to be in the team's performance?
Yes.
Okay. So depending on what it is, for you're talking about the provision about one-day rentals. Basically, if it's something that's particularly large, that would not normally be something that could be, obviously absorbed into the budget. But it's something that you could potentially rent somewhere. You can account for the one-day rental cost of whatever that thing is. So if it's I had a team one year that had a winch that they were using in their solution because they needed something very strong and powerful. They had to go do some research and find some place that would rent a winch that was comparable to the one that they had, and then they found out how much it was going to cost them to do it. I think it cost them like it was $28 or something like that for the day, and so they included that in their rental cost. Depending on what it is that you're including, if it's not something that typically you could rent, they're not going to, then you'd have to include the cost of it in the budget. So what exactly was it again that you were going to have?
So it's small things at home, like an old pool noodle, for example, or like old T-shirts, or the base of a Christmas tree. Small things like those.
Yeah, well, those things are going to be more so, like an old T-shirt. Typically, things like T-shirts that are just worn. And if you go through the Rules of the Road in the expense report section, which sounds like you've read it, it kind of gives you some things in there that are typically exempt from expenses. So, just normal street clothes, exempt. If it's costume, definitely needs to be included. Something like a Christmas tree base that's used, that you had it probably sitting around up in a shelf somewhere. Those are typically things that you're going to, this is where expense reports are not exact. You should just do your best guess on something like that. Okay, it was sitting up in the garage. It's been up there for 10 years. I don't even know what we paid for it. Do you have to go research Christmas tree stands? I would say no. What you should really do is just give it a fair value. Not knowing what kind of Christmas tree stand it is. Some of them are particularly, they're kind of plasticky and they're cheap, and you can buy one brand new for, $12 at Walmart at Christmas time. Something like that is going to be a used item. It's probably, you should probably assign a value of a couple of bucks, $3 to it, something like that, because that's what you could buy it for at a garage sale. If it's something more substantial, the one that we use at my house, we typically go with pretty big trees, and so that stand it's solid, it's metal, it's welded, it's heavy. We probably paid $50 for it. It wouldn't be appropriate to give that a $3 expense. There's just no way. You have to be reasonable about these things. So that's kind of a judgment call for you, of depending on what it is. You got some old scrap clothes that you've used that they've cut up. Those are going to be a couple of bucks because you've scrapped them out. Maybe there's a zombie in the skit and he's got, shredded up dirty clothes and things like that. Yeah, you're not going to give the shirt that kid's wearing a value of $7. It's going to be like $1 because it's just a scrap old piece of clothing. the idea is not to get that down to the penny. The idea is to keep the playing field level and even and fair for everybody. So it's, I wish I could give you like the concrete answer, but it's really, I would just go through it, use your best judgment, try and be as fair as possible in your assessment of the value of what you're using. If you've still got other questions, you could certainly reach out to your regional director. They may not be able to help you with it, but they might be a place to, try and give you some direction on how to best assess something if you've got a real specific item that's at question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And we have one more question. Any suggestions on how to go over the rules of the road with the team? It's long and dry.
Yeah, it is long and dry. Honestly, what I would suggest, and it depends on the age of your kids, the younger kids, it's obviously tougher because their attention spans are not that great. The older ones, honestly, I've got high schoolers. I tell them just to go home and read it because yes, it's dry, and yes, it's kind of long. The entire front to back Rules of the Road is 48 pages long, but that includes lots of extra pages where there's, the table of contents. There's some things about like the quick start guide stuff that, honestly, that's not stuff that the kids are necessarily going to need to read. So what I would say, maybe if you've got middle schoolers, is give them certain pages to read, kind of go through it yourself and find the areas where it's going to be real important. I think, if you haven't gone over the scoring, if they've still got questions, they could read through that section. Definitely the rules of interference are important, but at this point, those are really more for you than them. But they could definitely read that. Hopefully you've kind of gone through the, the areas of the team challenge. So where I think I would probably focus on is maybe the expense report area, which is usually I think it's about 3 pages long. And then immediately after that is the section on safety, which is a couple of pages long. Those are real important things. Then it talks about kind of clarifications and stuff. Clarifications I think shut down in about 5 days, so there's not really much left to do there. And then it kind of goes into some instant challenge stuff, which is good for them to read because there's some interesting rules in there. They may not know that everybody doesn't have to go into instant challenge. In fact, you don't have to go into instant challenge. And, I've seen teams do that where they say, we want to go in and do it by ourselves. And then, it's kind of the end of it is sort of some of the tournament rules. So, if you kind of break it up into those sections, it's not too bad. It's about 15 pages worth of stuff. So, I would kind of break it up into that, maybe each little section, give them 2 sections to do this week. Or, spend some time with them and, maybe take 15 minutes and, read it together. We just, we don't have time to do the whole thing, but we're going to go over the expense report and we're going to go over some safety stuff. Or we're going to go over, those are typically the 2 places I think where teams can trip up at the tournament, or maybe go through the tournament rules at the end. I think it's about 3 or 4 pages there too. So definitely, if you want them to go through some stuff, those are probably the key sections at this point versus having them go through the whole thing. And then, like I said, if the kids are much, much younger, it may be more productive just to go over those sections with them, spend a few minutes and do it.
Okay, I have a suggestion. If a good resource also before you're getting ready for the tournament is the travel guide.
Yes.
And it's been released recently. It's up on the idoodi.org, the Destination Imagination website, and you go right on the front page, Team Manager Resources. It's right there, the travel guide.
Yep, that one has a lot of good hints, good things. I think it kind of does takes sort of what we've talked about tonight and gives you some more granular details about different things. There's some good checklists and stuff in there too. Great idea. Yep. Absolutely. Any other ones, Dick?
No, that's it.
All right. Well, we almost got to we always seem to almost get to the hour and 15, no matter what we do. I love it. So, excellent. All right. Well, if there's no more questions, go get them. We'll see you at the tournament.
See you all at the tournament.
Thanks very much.